Episode 40 starts off the last group of episodes, with Dasmar setting up a series of hauntings in a housing development to scare out all of its inhabitants. As I've said, space like this is always in demand, so for an entire massive housing structure like this, which has been told thousands of people to become abandoned, it's a bit unrealistic. Still, there's some good ideas here, such as repurposing some of the yellow filters recovered from the destroyed underground city plan to be installed here. Boscon acts as an open spy for Jark's camp to keep an eye on the inspector, and when Reiko investigates the matter, Dasmar leaves the illusion of Jark on one of her photos, an intentional lure for Kotaro. He gets in while Joe and Kyoko play distraction, being accosted by his phantoms before engaging Gaina Jagram. Actually, this is all according to plan. Dasmar having saturated the area with surveillance equipment to analyze Arx's powers and abilities, like Maribaran is said to have done to Black before the series started. He sacrifices the Kaijin to get the last of the data he thinks he needs, then using prepared lasers to strike at the determined weakness, Rx's Sunbask, which cuts off Rx's ability to recharge from the sun, the investigator revealing himself and gloating over the fallen Rx. However, much as the Crisis officers did at the beginning of the series, Dasmater forgot about the Kingstone. As I've established, one of its powers most did not realize existed is the ability to release power to mend the body of its host, repairing the Sunbask in this battle, which automatically recharges the power spent by the Kingstone, returning Rx to full strength. And any second attempt to use the laser to damage Rx again is thwarted by Kyoko, who damages the equipment controlling it. Rx strikes at Dasmater with the Revolcane, but the Inspector escapes as an incorporeal shade, retrieving what data he can to hopefully produce a better weapon. As Crisis prepares to receive more immigrants, their operations are coming more and more out into the open, making it easier for Team Rx to find and strike them. The next episode opening with Kotaro, Joe, and Reiko attacking another of their relays. Gadazon arrives, attempting to defend it, but to no avail. Dasmater once again berates the group for their failure, not taking note of his own incompetence, and Maribaran deciding to call in her last resource, her aunt, an infamous Kamen demon known as the 100-Eye Hag. I call foul! I only count 38 eyes on that costume! The plan is to have the Hag absorb Kotaro and his allies into her eyes, a process by which the Hag extends her life, grabbing Kyoko first and using her form to infiltrate the others. Though Kotaro notes something off about her actions and saves them from being poisoned by her. But too little too late, as being in close proximity to her allows her to work her magic and draw them all into her eyes. She celebrates her success, as do the generals, until Dasmater brings up the threat she still poses. For as long as Kotaro lives, even inside their eyes, he can find a way to escape. It's probably the most intelligent thing I'll ever hear him say, even if it is lacking any type of, for lack of a better term, humanity. Even the Crisis officers have higher standards than this guy. Of course, Kotaro does break free using the power of Biorider, damaging the eyes that control the prison with Roborider, and frees his comrades before destroying the Hag. Maribaran, naturally, does not take this well at all. With the continuing failures and loss of their population through the deadly immigrations, the Emperor sends the officers a gift. A time bomb. This pyramid filling with a volatile red liquid that will cause an enormous explosion when full. So, they're on a time crunch, and to remedy this, Jark and company decide to sacrifice one of their own to appease the Emperor's anger. Ghidorah, the one-eyed bat, will thus be their patsy. The alien specialist creates one of their more powerful monsters, Gedol Rydol, which grows stronger by draining power from objects. Using this ability, he drains the power of Rx's kick, which startles Rx to the point he does arguably the worst thing he can: use his Kingstone Flash. The Kingstone Flash, as we've established before, taps directly into the core powers of the Kingstone. And in a monster that eats energy, unless you know you have enough power to cause it to explode from eating it, something specialized power leeches know not to do, you're just exhausting yourself. And Rx is. This, however, is where Dasmater intervenes, attempting to kill Ghidorah and stopping one of their number from once again killing Rx when he's weak and appeasing their Emperor. This is, what, the fourth time this has happened since he's appeared, which he's let Rx get away from what should have been his end? And yes, Rx gets away, and instead of blaming this on Dasmater where the blame should fall, the lot attack Ghidorah and get all right all. Ghidorah flees as Das Mater leads a force to track down Kotaro, who, again, only escaped due to the Inspector's incompetence. But during the search, a hooded figure infiltrates the Crisis Fortress. It is, of course, Ghidorah, who uses the power systems of the Crisis Fortress to transmit a constant power supply to Gadol Rydal, which can be expelled in a blast that destroys the city, intending to draw Kotaro out instead of force him into hiding. And again, this is the officer they wanted to kill. He got a monster that can weaken Kotaro and use his power against him to hurt others. He's using that monster to draw him out by attacking people he normally protects, and put his life on the line to do it. Whereas Das Mater waits in the wings for that opportune moment while criticizing everyone else's attempts, screws up that opportune moment when he gets it, hunts the enemy into deeper hiding when it goes bad with no way of drawing them out, and has no backup plans when his magnum opossum goes pear-shaped. You know, I thought the Crisis officers had a ton of bad plans in their early days, but they were getting more competent as time moved on. Das Mater's constantly turning their operations to crap. And of course, when the group investigates the power drain, it's revealed Ghidorah is using his own body in the relays, essentially killing himself to maintain the power supply to Gadol Rydal as his desperation plan. Forgetting, again, that with the Power Leech Kaijin full, it can't drain Kotaro's power after he recharges from the sun. Yeah, remember that part of his powers? RX times the intervals of the power infusions and severs Gadol Rydal's limbs when he is at the point where he can't absorb any more power, allowing him to destroy the monster and Ghidorah as a consequence. However, Ghidorah's death has ironically saved the other generals, as one more drop into the time bomb would have set it off. Fat lot of good it does them, as once more they have lost their best chance at killing Kotaro and getting free reign. Or so they think, for as the episode ends, 10 familiar figures are shown training themselves for battle. As I said at the beginning, behind the scenes the show had once again fallen off the chopping blocks and was not renewed thanks to the Kamen No Rider series, making the entire franchise a laughingstock. Though I had originally thought, like many, that it might have more been due to the weaker stories this year, as opposed to the last, despite it actually having more viewers. But since neither Black nor RX had any Rider cameos at all, it was well overdue. In the meantime, Gatazon goes straight after RX at the end of his battle with Gadol Rydal, wasting exactly 0 time. Das Mater watches this, finding new data to add to his collection, and correlating a power drop to RX's abilities when he manifests the Revolcane. Another good reason why he doesn't pull the weapon out at the beginning of his fight that is ignored in all series past this. RX breaks Gatazon's equipment, forcing him to retreat for now, and Gatazon doesn't have the parts to fix it anymore. Das Mater, however, does, and will give him what he needs in exchange for his last robot, Helga Dem, and his assistance in another plan to end RX. Who wants to bet this will end with the robot officer's destruction? Chaps take control of several gas stations, fueling the city's cars with a fuel mixture that causes them to break down and release noxious fumes. Yes, this is a Das Mater plan. Vehicle exhaust is cited as a high atmospheric pollutant, and a more potent mix could be used to create enough smog in an area for Chrysians to live. But then there's the problem of them breaking down. When that happens, it stops working. A car that doesn't work releases no fumes. No fumes, no pollution. No pollution, no atmosphere change. And no atmosphere change, no livable environment for Chrysians. Why are the environmental terrorists always the idiotic ones? Worse, this is yet another plot I'd see in Doctor Who that's actually far more competently executed there. Were the writers Whovians by any chance? Gatazon attacks Kotaro as he investigates, resulting in a battle on bikes. Oh goody, it's been a while since we've had one of those. Though, sadly, Kotaro doesn't change into Roborider, so Aqua Battler could become Roborizer, and thus have weapons on board that RX could use to counter Gatazon, his ranged weapons, and his superbike.
Stupid! You're so stupid!
Das Mater deploys Helga Dem as backup, the machine equipped with actual frickin' rocket punches. Holy crap, something awesome is happening! As a result of this attack, Aqua Battler is damaged, RX instead calling in Rhydron to evacuate them for now. As Kotaro repairs Aqua Battler, apparently his self-repair systems were lost in his evolution, Joe and Reiko take a crack at the Chrysian-controlled gas stations, where they find the volatile fuel mix downstairs and are captured. At least it's in a restraining field they overlooked and not by being ambushed and outfought. They used to draw Kotaro out once more, Gatazon and Helgadam double-teaming RX and... Hey, look! Gel form was countered! Gel form was countered! Ha! Not so invulnerable now, are ye? Wait, I'm supposed to be on his side, aren't I? Robo Rider, as I said before, was the form they should have really used in this fight. But, to draw the tension, they held off from that until now. Robo Rider destroying Gatazon's bike, with the officer losing it in the resulting shootout. Though, against a weapon with 100% accuracy and the ability to pierce armor, you should have really upgraded that magic gun of yours. However, Helgadam makes the save again, emitting a type of energy poison when RX draws the Revolcane, which results in the Sunriser, and by proxy the Kingstone, shutting down. The light of the Revolcane going out, which once more shows that yes, it's a freaking lightsaber, so Toei at any point making it a physical sword is in contradiction to the show they're pulling the character from. Fortunately, as I've said before, Kotaro has a support team. Kyoko, Joe, and Reiko coming in to keep the pair off of him long enough for the powers gathered by the Sunbask to restore the Sunriser to working order. The support team's efforts jam the energy poison emitter, and with no other defenses, RX deals with Helgadam. But again, Gatazon isn't leaving this time, detaching his head from his body, he's a robot, he can do that, and using it as a suicide bomb. Gale form is RX's salvation, and with nothing left but his personality core, RX easily ends the general. Too bad, he could have gotten a day job torturing test subjects at Aperture. Episode 44 begins the final arc of the series, the Crisis Emperor arriving on Earth with the remaining bulk of their military forces as Maribrun meets with the government. You know, this is the first time we see them do this. They've been attacking for a year, and every one of their plans has been thwarted. You're not exactly negotiating from a position of strength in their minds, so any ultimatum or coexistence compromise that may have been levied would already have been seen as push them a bit more and they'll fail. So while stupid to not try and work something out, it's at least understandable why they chose to refuse. Fortunately, the common man is more intelligent than the government in most cases. The Saharas, for one, decide to leave the city until this mess is over, as large cities are always among the first targets for final assaults, and the Saharas have been involved in events enough to be genre-savvy. Kotaro pops by for the first time in a while with gifts for the family, overall appearing in high spirits, though Shinkuchi, however, can see through his facade, only wanting one thing from him: to see his family, all of his family, to make it through this alive.
命を粗末にしたらダメだぞ。な、生きてもう一度みんなで一緒に暮らそう。
I love this dysfunctional family. You have been so good for Kotaro. Remember this, its relevance will be important soon. Meanwhile, a weapon of crises lands, taking out an island observatory. This is Grand Zarius. The invasion officers have long boasted that the monsters they send out are the strongest ones they have, and for the most part they have been naught but boasts. Grand Zarius, however, is on a whole different level, batting aside Joe and Reiko without a second thought. Kotaro goes out to fight it, and, yeah, does not do well, especially as Grand Zarius is backed up by Boscon and a division of chaps. And, to top the we're so screwed levels, when Arx tries the Revolt Crash early, it's rendered entirely ineffective. Yeah, free tip: the reason why Riders and Sentai never go straight for the finisher to open a battle is because it never works. The fight before they use the finishing move, allowing them to discover how strong an enemy is, learn how it fights, and weaken an enemy before using the finisher when the timing is right. The only instances I remember subversions of this happening are when they all end up being awful, as they don't understand how dramatic tension works, instead thinking a curb stomp battle will suffice. It doesn't. So yeah, backup is needed. And so fortuitous for us that 10 are waiting in the wings. This is awesome. Don't get me wrong, it's done in a ridiculous manner and before X has depleted all of his options, but there is worse timing for them to intervene and fall into retreat. As I said, the show was being cancelled again, and they once firmly said Black and Black RX in continuity with everything else, so this was the best time to do it. Thus, it's explained that the 10 writers had been dealing with secondary crisis operations around the world, while the main force was focused on Japan and Kotaro, training themselves to better combat these fiercely strong forces. Though this is again proof of how little knowledge Crisis had of Earth's protectors, them having completely missed references to the others. I will remind you, they've been infiltrating since the period where Neo Shocker was attacking, and Neo Shocker was ruled by a giant dragon incarnation of the great leader of Shocker. Also, fun fact, one of the most famous suit actors today, Seiji Takaiwa, got his start as Riderman in these episodes. Kotaro is called up by Crisis to continue the battle, the writers together fighting off the elite chaps, each of them getting a few seconds of featured screen time. RX engages Boss Gun, injuring him severely with an RX kick before running him through with the Revolcane. Even with the sword in him, Boss Gun tries to do lasting damage by stabbing RX, to little effect. And thus, 3 generals are left to be dealt with, as is Grand Zarius. And as Part 1 ends, Dasmata reveals that Grand Zarius, even if destroyed, still has the power to level Tokyo with the explosive force of several nukes, or a single M. Night Shyamalan movie. The writers engage Grand Zarius, though one by one their abilities prove ineffective against the Kaijin. Yes, this monster certainly warranted the team-up. As Grand Zarius turns up the heat on the writers, RX form changes to absorb it, but it's too much for even him. Hey wait, what happened to Super 1's thermal hands? They could cool this guy down. Kotaro is injured in the attempt, drops out of the battle, greatly pleasing Dasmata, who intends to detonate Grand Zarius prematurely. However, Kotaro recuperates faster than expected thanks to Kyoko, who opens a water spout that allows Kotaro to use Biowrider's abilities to fully heal himself, and proceeds to use Gel form to enter Grand Zarius, then attack him from the inside in the same manner Byakuya did, damaging enough of Grand Zarius to not cause as great a potential explosion, though it still blows him up and the concussive force knocks everyone away. Kotaro nowhere to be seen. This causes Crisis to celebrate. It may have taken them 40 monsters and 3 officers, but they finally killed him! This event inspires Mybron on how to deal with the remaining riders, using the last of her mystical powers to resurrect a group of fallen Chrysian Kaijin from the dead. We'll ignore that there's 2 robots among their number, and I'm pretty sure Chrysian robots do not have souls. The riders retreat to a refuge Goro has set up to let people recover on the outskirts of the city, only for their number to be infiltrated in one of the most stupid ways possible. So, yeah, mass monster brawl. The riders unable to kill them due to the creatures being able to fade into intangibility. Mybron gloats over this, showing duplicates of the golden feather from her helmet, which are the medium by which they manifest, and they are too busy fighting the monsters, so they can't get to them. A good thing Biowrider's nearby, ambushing Mybron. Yes, Kotaro went into Gel form before the explosion, and you can't destroy a liquid via explosion, you just scatter it. Biowrider unleashes multiple bioslashes, ending the monsters, while also scarring Mybron's face, and she is not happy about that. Goro makes everyone dinner as Kotaro recovers from the last battle, realizing their next enemy is Jark, as, remember, he hasn't seen Dasmata around to know he survived their last encounter. The Crisis Fortress in the meantime sits down above the caves they'd intend to use for an underground city, finding not just an incoming message from the Big Giant Head, but the Big Giant Head himself. The Crisis Emperor, who just so happens to be voiced by Goro Naya. Yes, it is believed by many that Emperor Crisis is in fact yet another incarnation of the great leader of Shocker. The only issue with that is that timelines do not match up. Maybe it could be retconned that all of his organizations since the original Shocker have been extensions of Crisis, and the Emperor manifesting those other forms because his real one was trapped in the Kamen world, but I personally doubt that. At least 10 years back they've been sending infiltrators, and Neo Shocker was active back then, and the great leader didn't call for reinforcements? Then again, he is an idiot. There is no debating this about the Great Leader, it's present with him in nearly every time he shows up. Option 2 is the Great Leader was banished to the Kamen world after the bottom plots were thwarted, which would be kind of ironic if that were supposed to be Eden, and then some form of timey-wimey nonsense happened so that it became unstuck in time. So for them, 1,000 years would have passed, and people escaping through gates got scattered across the timeline, until Crisis's innovations in dimensional transfer tech came about and created a new, stable corridor. And that unstuck thing could explain how it became so close to being swallowed by dark space. Or door number 3. Emperor Crisis is the alternate dimension counterpart to the Great Leader. Door number 4, alternatively, being that the Great Leader came to the Kamen world and then used his shapeshifting to take the form of the Crisis Emperor as well. And honestly, that last one seems the most plausible. Bringing it back to the plot, Jark failed and is going to put his own life on the line next, but to ensure his victory, he requests a power boost from the Emperor. Crap, I've seen enough anime to know where this is going. Jark is changed into Jark Middler, or is that supposed to be translated as Jark Murder? Either way, he got the power-up he wanted, and of course, the head is just a ruse. Das Mater is the real Crisis Emperor, using a false form to get closer to the action. This actually supports the Great Leader theory, as I have established a total of 2 things about the man. He is a shapeshifter capable of maintaining multiple incarnations at once, and he is an absolute imbecile when it comes to conceiving and executing evil plans. And of the 5 that came up with the plans of the week, Das Maters were the most incompetent. And here's where we have the lowest point of the show. I've made fun of the strategies, the writing, the continuity, the logic, and the fan subs in this review, but this is detestable. Writers, what the fuck were you on? To show his power, Jark attacks a convoy of refugees from Tokyo. In specific, the Sahara family. The group of 4 that were well-written levities to the story, and the surrogate family that took Kotaro into their home, are the first thing Jark targets for attack. With no help coming, Shunkuchi and Nutaku order Shigeru to take Hitomi and run. The pair's final act in life, to hold him back long enough for their children to live. This disgusts me. Made worse by the parents' heroic stand proving worthless. Jark easily overtaking the children, which is only stopped by the off-screen rush of V3, Riderman, X, and Amazon. Riderman and V3 hold the general back while X and Amazon take the kids to Kotaro, who was off fighting another Chrysid incursion. Yeah, he wasn't hiding. That wasn't needed to draw him out. He was already in the middle of battle when Jark did this. He could have gone straight to Kotaro and overwhelmed him when he was still unaware of the general being in play. But instead, they decided to make an example out of the surrogate family, and went to execute them to do nothing more than ensure when Kotaro fought him, the rider would hold nothing back. Shigeru begs to fight with him, to get revenge for his parents, but appropriately, it's Kyoko that talks him out of it. Right now, his place is with his sister, and to once again show his dickishness, Jark arrives and challenges Kotaro to solo combat, what he should have done in the first place, which is accepted. The fight, though, is really, really good, starting in their normal states before both transform, and building further to Robo Rider. I really do credit Jiro Okamoto, the suit actor for this one especially, as you can see Kotaro's rage on open display even under RX's suit. Jark overpowers Robo Rider, knocking the Voltec shooter from its grasp, where it's picked up by the siblings. In the name of their parents, Shigeru fires, to no effect. RX taking the retaliatory blow meant for him. He finally unleashes Bio Rider on Jark, the speed and abilities finally taking the fight in his favor, and finally, the battle ends with the general pierced by the Revolcane. Well, at least he died with a smile on his face. And with Jark dead, hopefully the Sahara children will be able to move on. With 2 generals left, Das Mater berates Maribron for her listlessness when there is a war to be won, and wow, delusional much? She's ordered to go to Kotaro and give him an invitation to meet with the Emperor. Naturally, a chance to get close to the man behind this all. It's an offer he can't refuse. What is an offer he can refuse is what the big giant head suggests in their confrontation.
Join me. With our combined strength, we can end this destructive conflict and bring order to the galaxy.
I'm not kidding with that Star Wars clip either. He wants Kotaro to succeed Jark as their general. What is with these attached evil masterminds that make them think this will work? This is another point in the camp for those that think this is the great leader. This entire bit is a trope of his. Maribron, enraged at even the idea of that, attacks Kotaro, only to be stopped and killed by the Emperor. A pity, but he probably was not happy with what happened to his daughter. And so, Kotaro was allowed to give his true response to the query, and it's as you would expect. Really, he was stalling for time so his allies could follow and attack Crisis' last stronghold, the Emperor taking the form of Das Mater and retreating into the Crisis Fortress and making for the Kamen world. However... And so the fight is on, but during this we get one last piece of new information about the Kamen world. Yes, we know it's supposed to be Eden, and has been connected to Earth through dimensional tides for an untold amount of time. What we didn't know, however, is that it looks just like Earth, and is meant to act as a mirror, one that was ruined by the world being thrown out of balance. And when the balance is broken, the Earth will die too.
Alex!
Yes! Yes, he is. You would freely kill, maim, and torture those that aren't with or like you. You see those of the world you wish to inhabit as beneath you, and don't even try to consider peaceful alternatives to the immigration. You want to save people from death, but the worth of the people to be saved is shown in your actions. And from what we've been shown, nearly every person worthy of saving from that dying world has already made their homes upon the Earth as they defied you. RX destroys the controls of the Crisis Fortress, the ship going up, and Das Mater re-manifesting as the Emperor's big giant head. But after everything Kotaro has fought, and with the abilities of his 3 forms, RX has little trouble in ending the Emperor for good. Are the Emperor's last words true? That's to be discussed in a bit, but the Kamen world and its connection to Earth are destroyed along with that mad entity. In the aftermath, Kamen Ichigo offers RX a place among the other riders, those who would continue to work to save the world, which he ultimately accepts. With this coming to the final scenes of the series, Kotaro and company laying Shukuchi and Utako to rest, the remainder of the cast paying their respects and going their separate ways, each with a different dream to shape their lives. And thus, the Showa television era for the writers ends as it began, with the hero riding off on his motorcycle to whatever the future awaits. I suppose I should talk about RX's movie, Stay in the World, but even after a few years mulling over it since I first saw it, I still don't like it, and it's all due to one singular reason. It, and it alone, is the inciting factor for a precedent I hate that later writers cannot get away from. The simultaneous existence of multiple Kotaro Minamis fighting side by side as both Black and Black RX, when there should not be. Hell, this film even brings in separate Robo-Rider and Bio-Riders. The plot is simple. Realizing they fucked up royally in their initial confrontation with Kotaro and destroying his transformation matrix, which resulted in him evolving into RX, the Crisis officers plan to go back in time to before they even did that. How? Why? Good questions. One that needed more than this 16-minute runtime to adequately explain. So, yeah, Crisis sends monsters back in time to kill Black when he was still fighting Gorgum. We'll forgive the fact that if Black died during the events of that series, Shadow Moon would have become the Creation King and had more than enough power to wipe Crisis out alone. That's really inconsequential in comparison to the rest of the stupid. The event not only snaps Kotaro's consciousness back in time with them, but on top of that, the Kotaro of the future arrives in Riderun as well, and you can tell where this all goes from there. Fight with stock costumes, a double rider kick, the usual. Even though Kotaro is immune to timey-wimey shenanigans like this, so this should not have worked in the first place. At the very least, his mind snapping back to his past body is further showcasing of that, but in an inconsistent way to how it was presented previously, which would all be ignored past this. Now, normally I wouldn't complain so much about something that should be Full Metal Awesome, but this is what keeps getting cited nearly every time Kotaro shows up in a crossover. The one that keeps doing it is writer Shoji Onomura, and as I have gone over in multiple videos, Shoji Onomura knows jack all about any writer show he himself did not work on. There's only been 3 times it's been passable. Decade's 2 team-ups involving him, and then the appearance in the terrible Let's Go Kamen Rider, as each of them at least have a justification for the duplication, weak as they may be. Either by alternate universe counterparts in the Decade examples, or time travel even bringing them in. And really, the problems with those events are more egregious in other areas than the duplication of Kotaro Minami. But I am putting my foot down with any further cases, such as the Tyson movies which repeatedly do it. They have no explanation, and pay no lip service to an understandable reason for their existence like that. And please, don't invoke Tsukasa and the Rider Worlds and the justification after all of the Rider War plotlines were completed and the Prime continuities were rejoined. The alternate Rider Worlds and that alternative Kotaro Minami that was still black are no longer connected to the main timeline. So that can't be used as an explanation. Look, writers, there is one very simple way to keep in both blacks without fucking up your own show's continuity. Restore the ability of Kotaro to become black, and have it appear as a low-powered usage form, and then let arcs be a high-powered, stable, tiered transformation. Or showcase Kotaro transforming, and have the energies split him into both his rider forms simultaneously, like the cloning abilities of later riders that allow multiple duplicates simultaneous autonomy. Don't keep cloning Kotaro Minami and give no explanations as to why that happens. I really wish that would stop happening, as it gets really irritating. Black RX has a lot of problems. From continuity errors, to stupidity, to the motivations of the villains not remaining consistent, to plot points that are forgotten in shooting but are remembered for narrative, and whole other things that are wrong, but it's propped up by what does go right with the show. The monster and character designs are excellent. Really, I think they're some of the best the franchise has had, and cover a lot of differing areas. My favorites, of course, being the robots. The entire cast gets something to do, and everyone they kept around for most of the series gets some form of development, and are not shoved into the background and forgotten about until they need to be called upon. They try a lot of different story ideas, and while a lot of them did not do well, they gave them a shot and did their best to make them work. And the fight scenes are superb, using a great use of varied battle music, some brought over from Black, but many new to the series. RX's abilities get a host of uses and much of the time replace perfectly with the situation, and don't feel like bad uses of Deus Ex Machina, mostly as the abilities are established. Rider, while being obviously a superior form thanks to all of his abilities, is not overused like you would expect them to be, and at times seemed more difficult to call upon, focusing on moments where Kotaro was angry, in desperation, or near a water source. Rider got used a lot more, but there's an understandable reason for why that related to Kotaro's character. If sorrow is the mental trigger, Kotaro's had a lot of tragedy and sorrow in his life that can easily snap the trigger for that form. And when stuck in a depression, it can be hard to feel other emotions. Explaining why it would be more difficult to trigger Rider changes as he can't easily tap his anger. The Sahara family was an easy way to include more childish, kid-oriented plots in the series and provide comic relief with their antics while providing moral support and a safe haven for Kotaro. None of them came off as annoying, and each had a defined personality. And it also gave Kotaro something worth fighting for, which after his dealings with Gorgum, he sorely needed, and likely helped him recover from all the tragedy associated with that conflict as well. Reiko was often used to lead Kotaro into the more obscure crisis plots, and was always looking at the world around her. When she regularly found herself in danger, she started training to better defend herself and encouraged Kotaro to be a better man. She was a good woman for him. Though sadly, the girlfriend angle seemed to fall through sometime late in the series. Though personally I hope they got back together at some point. Joe and Kyoko were combat support and good allies. Their directions were very well done, and the production team did something with their characters. When they couldn't think of anything to do with them, they were left out, as much of the supporting cast tended to be exchanged to appear and not appear in later episodes where the stories did not require focus with them. Goro was Goro. He was there. He wasn't a combatant, he was a chef. And like the others, only used when they needed him. So he did not overstay his welcome, even though he could have been cut with no problem. But Crisis were fucking morons. I've gone over this as it happened, but they're a bad XP of the Silurians from Doctor Who, and the evil organization from the Air Zone Solution. They need to conquer land and Earth so they can sell their people there, but that people are completely incapable of breathing on Earth without heavily terraforming it. The best way to provide them a home they can breathe in isn't even looked as an option until 10 episodes from the series finale. But the resources they spend on the war, transport, that second sun, the specialties of their kaijin, and all of that technology, with all of it in mind, they could have colonized Mars. They could have made space colonies. They could have contacted the Earth's government and exchanged their technological prowess for land in an area of the world humans can inhabit, and built a dome city they could control the environment of. They were doing it underground. They could do it in the Sahara and be supplemented with resources humanity could trade for their technology. They didn't need to be the invaders, and they kept stressing the importance of doing this so their people may survive, but completely failed to show why it mattered to them. Well, okay, the generals did show that concern, but the higher-ups, Das Mater aka the Crisis Emperor, they never seem to think things through. The G-Crystal is a microcosm of that, going through with that and not even telling his subordinates who recover the thing that the device it powers will end up destroying not only what they seek to save, but what they wish to conquer. It's character consistency, and it doesn't help that often they're promoting pollution and the destruction of ecology, which is what ruined their world. For the love of God, Captain Planet was a horrible show. They did not need to lift elements of it to show why the bad guys are bad guys. Especially since in their introduction, they wanted to also save Earth from becoming a dried up husk like their homeworld was. I kind of feel bad for them. The core 5 were dumb, but were doing bad things to save people, and were it not for the methods enforced by their ruler who they were loyal to, they could have attained their goal. But it's obvious the Emperor, actually the great leader or no, is more interested in conquest as the series reaches its conclusion than the people he rules over. So they never considered coexistence, because the term itself was alien to them. And that makes them all the more pitiable. Enough about the villains, let's talk about Kotaro. I think at the start of the series, he was still recovering emotionally from his fight with Gorgum. It's what makes the most sense to me, with everything he went through, and how carefree he was living at the time. Had Crisis not directly targeted him at the outset, I think he would have stayed out of it. But when he did, Kotaro was still going through the motions. As seen with how often he kicked Hayato's ass just to deal with the matter of the moment as fast as possible. He had a practice of, if I don't run across it, it's not my problem, as opposed to how he was driven to look for Gorgum before. Things that mattered to others didn't really connect with him, and it's probably why in-universe he could have cannibalized the road sector to build Rideron. He needed this thing now to deal with the current problems, and the road sector was just another reminder of what he had lost. So Kotaro's story arc for the show, to me, becomes one of an individual living with survivor's guilt, brought forth from being left alone after the conflict with Gorgum ended. Other series like Kamen or O's and Wizard would better explore a character arc about that, but it's quite tangible for him here. To me, he didn't begin to break past that until Hitomi was kidnapped. Saw that these people who took him in to their lives were hurting and he didn't do anything to really repay them or stop this from happening. And if he didn't step up, he would lose them just as he lost Nobuhiko. Just as he did his sister Kyoko, and also Katsumi, who was just as much family. He didn't try hard enough before, and if he was going to keep like this, he would fail again. But in the end, he couldn't save Nobuhiko, couldn't save the Elder Saharas. He still failed the people he was closest to, and that's why I think he eventually agreed to join the other riders and fight the evils of the world. His inaction, understandable though it may be with everything he had gone through, caused more people to die, and instead decided to safeguard other people's happily ever afters as penance for this, at the cost of finding and having one of his own. That is the tragedy inherent to the Kamen Riders of this era, to fade into memory and urban myth to protect the peoples from the shadows of the world, because they feel it is their responsibility to do so. And lastly, I need to talk about the Emperor's last words. With the Kamen world's destruction, he said a new one will be born through the evils of humanity's own acts. Whether we've seen it or not is questionable, but I think in an unintended way, we have. A world plagued with endless destruction. Enemies long dead revive endlessly without reason, and the Earth's protectors are busy fighting among themselves, for their own selfish reasons. Distant and disconnected from each other, to the point they often find their own allies at each other's throats. A world of endless war. A war of their own making. The world of the Rider War. We'll get more into this when I discuss Decade. It's taking a while, I know. Hopefully we'll get to it in 2019. But my personal theory, built with seeing the majority of the franchise at this point, is that in-universe, the conflict with Crisis, and in particular, the incident with the gate created by the G-Crystal, and the essential power found at the destruction of the Kamen world, that of a Kamen Rider, splintered the realities of the succeeding Kamen Riders. For as the Heisei era began, a policy was implemented to make nearly every Rider series as standalone as the creators could make them, after Agito's blatant contradictions of Kuga's timeline despite trying to build off of certain aspects of it, with each bearing their own separate timeline, their own rules, their own enemies, and realities to inhabit. Their stories intentionally cut off from each other, and this being more showcased in Toshiki Inoue's alternate universe Rider movies from Ryuki through Kabuto. At least until they wanted to start doing crossover events, thus had to reverse that decision and unite them and create an explanation in show to permit that. You fucked it up, guys. Thus, I see the Rider world convergence in Decade being all the powers calling out to each other and causing the collapse that started the war. The ability to freely travel between the dimensions through the curtains being a symptom of the dimensional collapse, whereas before, there was needed some form of stable gates or ships with specialized drives to make the trip. Again, it's something to be discussed properly when we get to Decade, since they never actually give a proper explanation for the Rider world fusion, and the reasons they do state as the reason are all contradicted and debunked within the storyline itself. But with Crisis' dimension transition technology, it's not surprising that their members and equipment would have ended up being involved in Decade. But as also said, that was more than likely completely unintentional on behalf of the writing staff considering the quality that came out of that show. Who knows? Maybe that was what Show Aikawa was originally going to go for before the dude got fired in the middle of the series and what he intended was derailed. As said, this is just an extensive fan theory. So finally to wrap up, we have the Kamen Rider Power Rankings. How does RX stand against the current top 5? First of all, Black is ineligible to fight RX. In fact, I am replacing Black with RX automatically on the list. As I believe it went over in episode 1, RX is Black. An evolved Black. A Black with better, more powerful abilities. Thus, having Black fight his older, more advanced self is not only stupid, it's redundant. As such, my reasoning for why Black would defeat stronger V3 and Amazon would still apply. Against Super 1, though, I have one word. Robo Rider. The thermal hands would be fully negated due to the power stripes even more than Black's own. The electro hands have a limited range, and Black's resistance to electrical shock would only be improved upon evolution RX. And if Robo Rider kept at a distance and fired on Super 1 with his Voltec shooter, the Hornet Rider would need to rush straight at him into fire that has a 100% accuracy rating and ability to penetrate armor, which means, yeah, he would be mowed down. That isn't to say Super 1 couldn't get in close early before RX form changes or before Robo Rider draws the Voltec shooter, as Robo Rider is much slower than RX's other forms, and the robotic movements would leave open opportunities of attack Super 1 could not only exploit, but use to wail on him with the power hands. But if RX got into that situation, form change for him takes a fraction of a second. Power Rider's Gel form would absorb those blows and allow him to retreat quickly. I'm uncertain on whether Gel form can be electrocuted or frozen, but we know energy and conventional weapons are worthless, explosions are only going to scatter the Gel form until it reconstitutes, and it was shown by Helgadem that it can be blocked. Elemental attacks? Those are more of an unknown. Knowing the properties of water, it's questionable that an elemental strike would knock him back into solidity and stagger him temporarily into suffering from a rider kick. I think Biorider's not invincible, but his vulnerabilities are just so abnormally few. So in very small circumstances, if RX would Biorider straight out, Super What could potentially pull off a win. But this list rates the overall capabilities, and RX's form changes are not something any of the 10 that preceded him could successfully counter with how their flexibility and changes were presented. So RX tops the list as the strongest rider of the Showa era. Despite RX's failings, I overall do enjoy it. I just wish the villains were written better. It is far from the worst entry of the 9 Showa shows, which I believe to be Skyrider with how repetitive and better told all of its stories were elsewhere, but with great shows such as its immediate predecessor, as well as Amazon and Super 1, it's not going to top many fans' list of favorite series, and for me probably falls into the middle of the pack, if not slightly below average. Still, the man was one hell of a charismatic writer, and I'm glad they decided to do the sequel series instead of another standalone. And this would be the last time all of these writers would appear together for over 20 years, so I'm sort of glad the final arc had them included, even if it was poorly written. Kamen Rider would languish in cancellation for a full decade before its revival in 1999, but in the interim, there were 3 films released in the 90s that fell in that Showa Heisei continuity gray area for the franchise, but are ultimately considered to be Showa entries because they were all overseen by Shotari Shinomori. And as this is the remastered version of the RX reviews, I have already made videos for them which are up on my site. Black RX, alongside Commodore Zeto and J, would additionally be adapted into the travesty known as Saban's Masked Rider, and it is notoriously terrible. I have reviewed that as well if you'd like to once more check out some of my older videos. And with that, I have a lot more remasters to work on to get stuff on YouTube. I'm this Shinta, and we'll see you all next time.